So I'm going to read from Growing Up Golem, which I'm describing as a magical realist memoir. What you need to know before I read this passage is, in the book, I'm Donna Minkowitz, myself, who goes and writes for the Village Voice, but I'm also a golem, which is sort of a clay robot from Jewish mythology. Golems are created as slaves by very powerful rabbis or magicians using Jewish magic. They mold a creature out of clay and magically invest it with life using one of the names of God. In the book, my mother is one of these powerful Jewish magicians. And in real life, she actually did tell my sisters and me that she could do magic from the Kabbalah. The other thing you need to know is that golems are essentially fake. They're fake human beings, basically. The Voice actually cost money in those days, but we willingly paid for it. It was the best periodical around, except for maybe the New Yorker, which was outside our acquaintance, probably because of class. I started out reading mostly the personal ads. Sometimes my sisters and my mom and I would read them aloud together, laughing. Afra, 17, liked reading Jill Johnston and would keep Jill's lesbo treatises on the kitchen table and say how much she loved them. By 14, I myself was much more in love with Jeff Weinstein and Ellen Willis. Ellen Willis wrote about her desires, even if they were ugly or unfeminine or antisocial or disturbingly self-undermining. She was fearless in a way that neither male writers nor feminists had been to that point. She ruthlessly exposed her own contradictions. Willis wrote that she could not simply dismiss the Sex Pistols' sexist and nasty anti-abortion song, Bodies, although it was, she said, an outburst of loathing for human physicality, a loathing projected onto women because they have babies and abortions and are, quote, a fucking bloody mess, as the Sex Pistols put it. She could not just dismiss the song, she wrote, because the extremity of its disgust forced me to admit that I was no stranger to such feelings. I couldn't believe anyone would admit they had disturbing and terrifying feelings that undermined their own deepest strength. I only had feelings of that kind, and I did not plan on broadcasting it. None of my feelings were connected to my source of strength, because golems are bred for self-disgust and a permanent discipline. Still, the Voice's restaurant reviewer, Jeff Weinstein, did not seem to be disgusted by anyone or anything. He could even love food products that had actually been manufactured in factories. On one occasion, Jeff wrote a sensual and moving review of a canned spray that smelled exactly like the scent of a warm, buttery apple pie. He quoted Keats in order to praise that apple pie spray. That review spoke to me. Did not sprays have their poetry too, and the tormented aluminum beings their own beating hearts? I lived in the world of poetry despite having some industrial garbage in me and even some chemical food preservatives that drying had helped to form my faux skeleton. Why couldn't a spray can hang out at Max's Kansas City and drink beers and write its own occasional poetry too? Some people had mind-blowing sex with their TVs, so why should it be inconceivable that a being like me, a sort of extra thoughtful, extra passionate toaster, was capable of love? Fuck. There is, oh reader, inevitably something more that I'm not saying. A thing I have to mention before I tell you what happened to my arms and with the married woman. Okay, I haven't mentioned her, you guys, but maybe she's in there. And the rest of this terrible story. It sticks in my throat. Or it adheres in the skin under my skin. I have always been quite confused about what kinds of things are my body and what kinds of things aren't it. What my mother attached to me with the extra glue left over at the end. How far my body extends into the world, and which objects are actually embedded in it, and which are other than me. So, in the organs beneath my first layer of cleverly shaped imitation human organs, in the old sheep caul membrane she stitched inside as an extra structure on which to hang all that painted work, the taxidermy and papier-mâché that form my base, with nickels and lifesavers and Christmas ornaments embedded here and there to spark the magic. There is an activity that does not like to describe itself, but I will tell you what it is. My mother put locks on her speech, on my speech, even the speech of some little gnomes and watchful ghosts we had around the house, but I have found a way to pick them all. I've already told you I'm a good liar. I'm pretty swell at cheating at cards, lock-picking, and escaping, too. I am covered with oil. You cannot keep me tied. I am Houdini. I am Proteus. My mother, I feel stupid now for all the suspense. You probably won't even find this a big deal. Why am I breaking out the good olive oil for this? You'll probably just think that I'm a huge baby. Well, she used to do things that turned me on sexually. It confused me and ignited me. Both those things happened when my mother danced out in front of me with no clothes on, or in her most ecstatic panties, silk nothings tied with bows, or else exquisitely see-through, red or black, filmy and beautiful, asking, "Don't I look sexy?" She would model nightly for me and my sisters. There was a bra of fire-colored lace through which the cleavage was a heaven that I tried not to look at. There was a gorgeous blouse and pants set with an Edenic apple tree stretching wide across her breasts, a set my mother was wearing when, she told us delightedly, a man had mistaken her for a prostitute and asked how much she cost. The prostitute mistaking had happened that very afternoon. The new clothes and the modeling began right after my mother's surgery, when the new hole had been carved into the bottom of her neck. My mom had a permanent trach. She survived an operation for cancer of the larynx, but so she had this trach for the last 25 or 30 years of her life. Her nose and mouth had been disconnected from her breathing apparatus. Perhaps this was the reason why she seemed to have become an entirely different person. For a few months after the operation, my mother was only able to eat disgusting-looking, foul-scented foods she prepared for herself in a blender, spinach or chicken or liver puree, along with actual jars of baby food. I was much younger then, only 7, and my mother had suddenly changed her wardrobe and all her customs around dressing and undressing. She showed herself naked to us kids for the first time, and her newly seen body seemed white hot. No one in my family had gone naked to the others before then, except presumably my mother and father to each other. Now my mother showed off her nipples to me, smiling as I watched. They were large and brown, luscious and disturbing to me. She wore a tiny yellow sundress that made her look exactly like the hillbilly dreamboat Daisy May in the Lil Abner Sunday Comet that I read each week with lust and confusion. Daisy May looked skanky but lovely, and her so-deep cleavage gave her a confusing, shameful power over all the men. I began to have a new job every afternoon, washing my mother's back in the bathtub. I never questioned why it was my job and not, say, my father's, but I came to sit on the tub whenever my mother summoned me, dreading it. I was supposed to wash her back to prevent her from drowning, my mother said. She was afraid of accidentally getting water into her new hole if she washed herself. My mother would conversationally refer to the trach as my hole. Why she thought a 7-year-old would be better at not getting water there, I do not know. My mother washed all of her other parts herself, including her lustrous long black hair. But her back, with creamy freckles all over it, a beautiful back, as my mother always told us, was for me to wash with a washcloth. I cannot remember any more paralyzing moment from my childhood than entering that bathroom and trying to avoid looking at my mother's breasts, or her vagina from under the waters, its hair gone smooth and luxuriant. I would cross that enormous expanse from the bathroom door through the entire front side of my mother and finally get to the back, which was less frightening, but still too creamy and beautiful. I tried not to look at any other part of my mother but her back. I told my mother I didn't like washing her back, but she said I had to or she would drown. I finally stopped doing it, perhaps by 14. As a result, reader, I was not used to getting what I wanted. I was used to longing for what I needed and never ever getting it, to staring at what I needed shamefaced from the other side of the bathroom, in fear and regret and love and pain. All golems have faced immediate death at every moment because their makers could kill them by writing just one letter of the alphabet on their bodies or erasing one. By telling them to die, a command that every golem must obey, by pulling a holy scrap of paper out of their mouths on which a secret name of God had been written, or by walking around the golem 3 times and saying God's names backwards. So I was terrified each time I came close to anything I needed that it was going to be snatched from me, like my mother snatching the life-conferring paper out of my mouth, my ticket being snatched, dying again, the way I did every afternoon washing my mother's back, given a hope of living, and then frustrated. And I'll stop there and take questions. Thank you.